If you said yes to everything on your calendar this week, Tao, when exactly did you choose any of it?
That question makes my chest tighten a little.
Yeah.
Because the honest answer is, Doe, I don't think I did.
I just
didn't say no.
What if every yes you give away is a no to something you never even named?
Welcome to the Life Architect Podcast.
Let's get into it.
Welcome to the debate. Yesterday, you probably said yes to something you immediately regretted.
Oh, almost certainly.
Right? You knew you didn't have the time, you knew you didn't have the energy, and yet the word just slipped out of your mouth before you could even process the request.
Yeah, it's like an automatic reflex at this point.
Exactly. So why? What evolutionary glitch makes us sabotage our own peace, our own schedules, just to avoid 5 seconds of interpersonal awkwardness?
Well, that is exactly what we are dissecting today. We're looking at this psychological landscape where our default setting is honestly just total compliance. The central question of our discourse is this: are we actively choosing our lives, or are we letting the endless demands of others dictate our days through a series of unconscious, fear-driven default settings?
And we are grounding this entire discussion in the core philosophies presented in Greg McKeown's Essentialism. But we aren't looking at this as, a simple time management issue.
No, definitely not.
We are examining the deep physiological and emotional barriers to living essentially. I take the uncompromising position that not choosing is still a choice. It's just a choice made by fear, or worse, by someone else's agenda.
Right.
We must ruthlessly decide what matters, or our lives will just be spent building other people's dreams.
And, well, I am bringing the friction to this philosophy today, because while that sounds pristine and logical on paper, I argue that saying no carries profound, undeniable social costs.
It does.
It triggers a deep-seated fear of selfishness, and in a deeply connected world, it undeniably lets people down. Reclaiming your time requires an emotional toll that, frankly, I'm not entirely convinced is sustainable for the average person.
Well, to get to the bottom of this, we first have to shatter the fundamental illusion under which almost everyone operates.
Okay, what's the illusion?
There is this pervasive, practically invisible myth that everything presented to us is equally important and equally urgent. We live in a society infected by the undisciplined pursuit of more.
That's a good way to put it.
We just assume that if an opportunity or a request is put in front of us, it inherently possesses value simply because it exists.
I mean, it's the paradox of access, right? Because we can be reached at any moment via text or email, we feel we must respond in every moment.
Exactly. But the stark reality is that a drastically small number of things matter immeasurably more than the rest. When we fail to apply ruthless criteria to our choices,
we just get busy.
Worse than that, our lives devolve into a constant, exhausting reaction to the stimuli around us. Every single yes we utter consumes a strictly finite resource: our time, our energy, our cognitive bandwidth.
Okay, mathematically, sure. If I have 10 hours, I can't give away 12. But you're completely ignoring the immense social cost of that math.
Am I?
Yeah, you are. When you tell someone they just need to start saying no to the non-essentials, you are effectively asking them to sever the very ties that make them feel safe and valued in a community.
I think that's a bit dramatic.
No, it's real. Saying yes isn't always a failure of discipline. Most of the time, it stems from a deeply human desire to be generous, to be committed, to be the reliable one in the family or the office.
But is it actual generosity, or is it just a survival reflex?
It feels like survival because, from an evolutionary biology standpoint, it absolutely is. We are hardwired as a species to belong to the group.
Sure, historically speaking.
For hundreds of thousands of years, if you were exiled from your tribe, you died, you starved, or you were eaten. Our brains haven't updated to realize that saying no to a committee meeting won't result in us being left on the tundra to freeze.
Right, the amygdala response.
Exactly. When we say no, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, fires off the exact same alarm bells as it would for a physical predator. The fear that stopping the flow of yeses will instantly make one appear less capable or less dedicated, it's a visceral, biological panic.
Well, I don't dispute the biological reality of the panic. What I dispute is letting a misfiring amygdala run the trajectory of your life.
Fair enough.
Let's look at how this glitch manifests in the real world. We confuse being busy with being important, and we have built a culture that actively rewards the bad behavior of agreeing to everything and punishes the good behavior of drawing a boundary. And nowhere is this more weaponized than in the modern workplace.
Let's put this in the real world then, because the workplace is exactly where this fear is most concentrated. distracted. I want to bring up a highly recognizable situation from, honestly, just this past week.
Go for it.
Imagine it's a Thursday afternoon. You are flying out for a meticulously planned, deeply needed vacation on Friday morning. A manager or a senior colleague walks up to your desk or pings you and asks for help with a last-minute, completely non-mandatory project.
Yes. The classic manufactured emergency.
Right. And your immediate internal thought isn't, oh, I need to protect my finite resources. Your immediate thought is, if I say no to this, I just lost my next promotion.
Yep. The instinct is to prove your dedication.
You want to show you are a team player. If I push back and decline that request right before I leave, I am acutely aware that I will be perceived as selfish or at the very least, not fully committed to the mission of the team.
But let's look at the mechanics of what happens when you cave to that fear. If you take on that extra project, are you actually being dedicated or are you just majoring in minor activities?
Well, you're trying to do both.
But think about the cognitive load you are taking on. You are operating under the delusion that you can seamlessly execute both things, preparing for your departure and diving into a complex new project. You cannot.
People do it every day.
They survive it every day. The human brain cannot straddle two high-stakes strategies simultaneously without a massive drop in executive function.
So you just try to work faster. You stay up late.
And your quality of work plummets, your cortisol spikes, you make careless errors on the project because you are rushed, and you finally arrive at your vacation completely distracted, physically depleted, and emotionally volatile.
Okay, that part is accurate.
You didn't do anyone a favor. By trying to accommodate that request, you failed at the margins everywhere. If you do not prioritize your life, someone else will gladly do it for you. Your manager's lack of planning has now successfully overwritten your life's agenda.
I understand the mechanism you are describing, but what you are calling a delusion is often just learned helplessness.
How so?
When people are in a work environment that constantly demands more, they don't feel they actually have a choice. It isn't a conscious desire to major in minor activities. They are trapped in a system that conditions them to stop seeking autonomy.
I see that.
They become hyperactive, throwing themselves into every assignment because they believe nothing they do will ever stop the influx of demands.
But that hyperactivity is a smokescreen. It looks like dedication, but it is actually the total surrender of your agency. And the way to reclaim that agency isn't by fighting the entire corporate structure or trying to rewire your amygdala overnight.
Then what is it?
It is by inserting a mechanical pause into your routine. This is a concrete action you can take the next time you are cornered. Stop making casual, instant commitments.
Hard to do in the moment.
It is, which is why you need a script. When that manager approaches you with the last-minute project, you do not say yes and you do not say no. You use a very specific line. Let me check my calendar and get back to you.
Which sound incredibly basic.
It is, but its psychological function is profound. It is an amygdala bypass. Immediate social pressure.
The manager walks away satisfied for the moment.
Exactly. But more importantly, you buy your prefrontal cortex the necessary time to come back online. You give yourself the psychological space to actually evaluate if this project is essential or if it's just noise. You take the power to choose back into your own hands.
Okay, I can concede that checking the calendar is a brilliant tactical move in a transactional environment like a corporate office. But I have to push back here.
Go ahead.
What happens when the requests aren't coming from a manager whose agenda you can objectively evaluate? What happens when the requests are coming from the people you genuinely love? This is where your philosophy hits a wall for me.
It only hits a wall if you refuse to acknowledge the invisible trade-off.
What do you mean by that?
Every time you say yes, you are implicitly saying no to something else, even if you don't name what that something else is. Saying yes to everything is often framed as an act of generosity. It is not.
It feels generous.
It is an act of absence. Because by the time you actually arrive at the fifth commitment you made this week, there is absolutely nothing left of you to give. Your physical body is there, but your presence is entirely bankrupt.
Let's test that against a scenario so many of us fall into, the overcommitted weekend.
Let's hear it.
So, on Friday night, you agree to attend a friend's birthday gathering across town. On Saturday morning, you agree to jump on an optional work email thread that a colleague swore just needed a quick set of eyes, which inevitably spirals into a 3-hour problem-solving session.
Naturally.
And on Sunday, you have a family obligation, a lunch with extended relatives that you agreed to weeks ago.
A perfect storm of default yeses?
Right. And by Sunday night, you are completely numb. You are exhausted to your very bones. You are sitting on the edge of your bed and you realize you you have no idea which of those events actually meant anything to you.
Because none of them did.
But here is the crux of my resistance. None of those obligations were malicious time wasters. They were all good things. A birthday, helping a colleague, seeing family.
Sure.
How do you justify saying no to good people who actively want your presence? How is that not just fundamentally selfish?
Because you are operating under the false assumption that you actually showed up for them.
What do you mean? I was there.
Think of your psychological bandwidth like a city's electrical grid. You have a finite amount of power. You plugged in the birthday party, you plugged in the 3-hour work crisis, you plugged in the sprawling family lunch. What happens to a grid when demand exceeds capacity?
You get a blackout?
Or worse, a rolling brownout. You don't fully shut down, but the voltage drops so low that nothing functions properly. You were physically present at the birthday, holding a drink, but your mind was anticipating the Saturday work.
Yeah, that's true.
You are physically typing the email, but you are resenting the loss of your morning. You are physically sitting at the family dinner, but you are completely dissociated, just waiting for it to be over. True presence is biologically and psychologically impossible when your energy is hopelessly fractured.
But I was trying to be there. I was trying to give them what they asked for.
And you failed them anyway, just in a much slower, more agonizing way. Think about the version of that weekend where you applied a ruthless filter. Imagine you said yes to only one thing. Just one. The one that actually mattered to you the most. What would Sunday night have felt like?
It would have felt entirely different. It would have felt restorative. I suppose I would have felt like I actually participated in my own life instead of just surviving it.
Precisely. You wouldn't be a ghost haunting your own schedule. When you spread yourself that thin, your contribution to each event is negligible. This is why we have to apply the concept of the clear yes.
The clear yes?
Yes, this is the concrete action for navigating the overcommitted weekend. Starting today, you must evaluate every invitation against an extreme criterion. You ask yourself, is this a clear yes?
But life isn't always that black and white. What defines a clear yes?
If you have to think about it, it is not a clear yes. It's the 90% rule. You evaluate the opportunity on a scale of 0 to 100. If you feel anything less than total, resounding conviction, if your internal rating is an 85 or an 80, you must drop it to a 0.
Wow.
If it isn't a definitive, enthusiastic yes, it must be a no.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that.
Why not?
Let me tell you why. Dropping an 85% to a 0 implies a level of emotional detachment that most human beings simply do not possess. It sounds like a sociopathic way to treat your friends.
Sociopathic is a strong word.
But it feels that way, which brings us to the emotional peak of this entire philosophy, the part that is the absolute hardest to swallow, the actual devastating cost of choosing. Because what you are really saying, if we strip away the theory, is that living intentionally means you will disappoint people.
Yes, you absolutely will.
And you say that so cleanly, but it is agonizing in practice. Let's look at a social invitation. An old college friend, someone you have genuine history with, happens to be in town. They text you at 4 p.m. Hey, I'm only here for tonight. Let's grab dinner.
Okay.
But you had already planned a quiet, restorative evening at home. Maybe it's a rare evening with your spouse or your child, or maybe just by yourself. An evening you desperately, physically need to recover from a brutal week.
So you stay home.
You know for a fact that if you go to that dinner, you will be exhausted, resentful, and utterly depleted for the next 2 days.
The choice there is mathematically and psychologically obvious. You decline the dinner, you protect the asset, which is yourself.
But that is the hardest part for me. That is the barrier. I don't know if I can just sit with the guilt of letting a friend down.
Guilt is just an emotion. It passes.
Disappointing someone feels like a profound personal failure. We are socially conditioned to believe that if someone wants access to us and they are a good person, we owe them that access. Denying them feels like a rejection of the relationship itself.
It isn't a rejection of the relationship.
Try telling my brain that. How do you just sit on your couch trying to have a restorative evening when your stomach is in knots because you know your friend is sitting in a hotel restaurant somewhere, feeling rejected by you.
I will concede this point to you. I won't pretend that feels good. It physically aches. It is profoundly uncomfortable to know you are the source of someone else's disappointment. But I would frame that discomfort entirely differently.
How?
That disappointment isn't proof you failed them. It is proof you chose.
But the disappointment is real. It hurts them.
It is real, but you are catastrophizing it. You do not have to be totally comfortable with their disappointment. You just have to realize it isn't the most important thing in the room.
What could possibly be more important than a friend's feelings in that moment?
The version of your life you are missing out on because you are constantly managing everyone else's expectations.
Oh, wow.
That unlived life is equally real, and I would argue far more tragic. When you prioritize everyone else's minor discomfort over your own fundamental well-being, you are committing a quiet betrayal against yourself. You have to separate the decision from the relationship.
How do you practically do that without sounding cold?
By understanding that declining a request for dinner is not a referendum on the friendship. It is simply a logistical decision about your finite energy on a Tuesday night.
So what do you say to them?
When you decline that social invite today, you communicate gracefully but firmly. You don't over-apologize. You say, I value our friendship so much, and I would love to see you, but I simply do not have the bandwidth to meet up tonight. You have to accept a short-term loss in popularity for a long-term gain in self-respect and actual presence.
But that short-term loss feels entirely unsafe. It feels like burning a bridge. The fear is that they won't ask you next time.
It only burns a bridge if the entire relationship was predicated on your absolute compliance. And if someone's friendship requires you to exhaust yourself on demand, was it a relationship worth keeping?
That's a tough pill to swallow.
People who respect you will eventually respect your boundaries. In fact, they often respect you more for having the courage of your convictions. But you have to be willing to walk through the fire of that initial awkwardness.
I think what this highlights, and why this hits so hard, is the profound exhaustion of living a life by default. When we don't make these hard choices, when we avoid the short-term discomfort of saying no, we end up living that quiet tragedy you mentioned.
We really do.
We become people who are everywhere, but present nowhere. We are on the email thread. We are at the family dinner. We are at the college friends reunion, but we are hollowed out. We've given away every piece of ourselves to maintain the illusion of being capable until there is nothing left for the things that actually anchor our souls.
Which brings us to the ultimate inescapable realization of this entire philosophy. The discomfort of saying no, that sharp guilt you feel when you let a friend down, that spike of anxiety when you tell a manager you need to check your calendar, that is the necessary entry fee for a life of meaning.
The entry fee?
Yes. It is the toll you must pay to move from a life of passive reaction to a life of active design. It is the only way to make an actual, significant contribution to the world rather than just generating friction.
Well, we definitely agree that identifying what truly matters is the only sustainable way forward. But I will maintain a lingering tension over this. Retraining yourself to accept the disappointment of your peers goes against our deepest evolutionary instincts.
It absolutely does.
It is not a clean mathematical process. It is messy, it triggers our deepest anxieties about belonging, and, well, it hurts.
It does hurt, but let's return to the underlying truth. If you never have the courage to say, I cannot do this, you will never have room for anything new, anything beautiful, or anything that truly belongs to you. You will spend your entire life suffocating under the weight of everyone else's priorities.
It leaves us with a heavy, yet incredibly liberating reality to sit with today.
You can't do everything. You are never going to. The only real choice is whether you decide what matters or let your calendar decide for you.